Thanks, Leah. Well, joining us on the line now, I have Jason Fernandez, co-founder and CEO of AE Token. Jason, thank you so much for joining us on the line today.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for having me.
You're always welcome. Now we're going to jump straight in. There's a handful of topics that have been the focus on this Monday. One of them has been news coming out of JP Morgan, and that's JPM Coin. Is JPM Coin, is it a cryptocurrency?
So JPM Coin is a cryptocurrency, but only in the strictest sense of the word. I mean, it does use cryptography, and it does essentially use blockchain to transfer funds from one place to another, which is common with cryptocurrencies. But that's where a lot of the comparisons end. JP Morgan's new coin operates privately and is only used for money transfer between JP Morgan and its clients. So it won't operate on a public network in the same way that cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin or Ethereum do. And that's one of the key differences between JPM coin, which is used for internal settlements, and something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, which is public. Additionally, most cryptocurrencies operate on public networks that anyone can join without permission. And the theory being that many computers working together on a shared ledger is supposed to improve security. In contrast, JPM Coin will run on a blockchain network called Quorum, which requires permissions and users to be pre-approved by JP Morgan. So it's not a cryptocurrency in the sense that we're traditionally taught to think about cryptocurrencies.
And I think what's interesting, if we look at JPM Coin and we also look at Mitsubishi Financial Coin, are these kind of tokens, are they a threat to the global payment systems like we do see from Ripple and also from SWIFT?
So I would say that they're not direct threats as of now, because a bank-issued digital asset can only really efficiently settle between the banks that issue it. So for this to become a threat, all banks are essentially Coin would have to start working with other banks. And in this scenario, all banks around the world, if this were to actually start working out, all banks around the world would have to put aside their competitive and geopolitical differences, adopt the same digital asset, agree on its rules, and harmoniously govern its usage, which is highly unlikely. But you see this approach with a lot of other banks. So, for example, UBS, Deutsche Bank, Santander, BNI, Mellon recently announced their utility settlement coin, which is a new digital asset that they hope will become an industry standard. They expect banks to initially use the coin for post-trade settlements by early 2018, after they secure, blessings from the regulators and so on. That's basically one approach. The other approach, the other scenario, and the more likely scenario, is that the banks not in the issuing group will end up issuing their own digital assets with their own set of rules and governance. So we've seen this happen with the Japanese mega banks, Mitsubishi Financial Group, Sumitomo Mitsui Financial Group, and Mizuho Financial Group. All three of these banks are working on a joint cryptocurrency that they were going to use for having their users basically send funds between each other, just using like an email address and a telephone number. But predictably, this essentially broke down into each of these companies, or at least Mizuho Financial Group and Mitsubishi, basically developing their own digital cryptocurrencies named Jcoin and MUFG Coin. And that's exactly what ends up happening, is that you start seeing this sort of fractionalization. And you see that already with Citicoin or Goldman Sachs Settlecoin. Essentially, you're going to have a lot of individual banks with their own coins and nothing that really talks to it. And essentially, that's a problem that Ripple is trying to solve. And Ripple is trying to be sort of the go-between between multiple banks. And so that's why their banking partnerships are really really indicative of how their price moves, because the easy part kind of is building a coin and the infrastructure behind that. The hard part is essentially getting a bunch of banks to agree with you that they're going to work on your system. And that's something that JPM Coin hasn't really had to deal with, because they're just transferring money between themselves. But in the future, it could very well be start becoming a threat to Ripple if they start sending money to other banks and start having better and more and other agreements. And then you're going to start seeing consolidation in the industry, because they're not the only game in town. There's also UBS, Deutsche Bank, and the other banks I mentioned. So that's what we'll be seeing in the future.
And you've given us an idea there of some of the major financial institutions that are turning to crypto. You mentioned Ripple there. If we talk about SWIFT, would these kind of crypto coins made from these major financial organizations, is there a risk they might make SWIFT obsolete eventually?
So one of the points is SWIFT isn't really standing still. SWIFT is also looking into blockchain They have something known as a Global Payments Innovation Platform, and recently they launched a POC, a proof of concept of a gateway that would allow R3, which is a blockchain enterprise blockchain software firm, to connect to GPI. And the idea is R3 has a universal payments app that supports Ripple to send money across, and also now Swift has also written code that will allow them to plug into the same system. So probably the more direct competitor would be something like R3, which is sort of, and even Ripple, because they're sort of the middle point between banks. But one of the problems about, if you were transferring money, it would be a risk to take the exchange rate volatility risk associated with having Ripple as a bridge currency, when you could just have a fiat coin backed by JP Morgan. So that's one of the problems that Ripple is going to have going forward. But Swift is definitely not standing looking at blockchain solutions, and that's why I was saying that you're going to start seeing a lot of next few months where a lot of these banks and modes of sending payment. Ultimately, you're only going to see 2 or 3 big providers.
Great. And now if we move over to the importance of asset price, what do you think it boils down to? Do you think it boils down to public perception, or do you think it's actual, and more so perception actually, than actual value?
So if you're referring to the asset price of companies like Ripple or R3, or basically companies that are essentially transferring funds or using blockchain to transfer funds, the value of any settlement network comes from its liquidity. And on a banking network, that liquidity comes from the number of banks that exist on the network. So in the case of JP Morgan, this is just JP Morgan. But in the case of Ripple, that's multiple banks. In the case of R3, that's multiple banks. So to some extent, yes, it comes down. It is a perception of worth, but that perception is influenced by actual value in terms of how many banks has that particular company actually signed up.
Great. And now if we look at crypto ETFs, how can we compare a crypto ETF against a traditional ETF in an open marketplace? How would you compare or fare the two?
Well, there's a lot of funds in traditional ETFs. There's a lot of institutional investors that are used to trading traditional ETFs. Nobody really knows how investors will take to crypto ETFs. But a good way to look at it is while it might take time, even if it were to have a small effect, and in terms of like traditional ETFs, crypto ETFs become a small percentage of the amount of traditional ETFs that are being traded, that could still have a huge impact on the whole blockchain industry. Because again, you're looking at a crypto industry which is like a market cap of just over $100 billion. So even $5, $6, $7 billion in ETFs in a year could really move the market. So as a new asset, it might take some time, but I think over time, even a small difference will massively move the crypto market at large.
Now, you mentioned the crypto market, Jason, and I'd love to get your insights. Obviously, as we know, there are thousands of cryptocurrencies out there. Do we think when these cryptocurrency tokens do hit the top 100 or the top 10 even by crypto market cap, that suddenly they get a little bit more of the public eye? It does put the project in the spotlight. Is this a good way to analyze the crypto moves?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, CoinMarketCap has been for a while, and like any sort of investment vehicle, if you look at the stock market, out of the top 10, like the same way as you would look at the top 10 stocks or the top, cryptocurrency, you look at the top 100 assets, but even the top 10 is something that a lot of investors look at. So clearly, if you're a cryptocurrency and once top 10 number, that would bring enormous amount of attention your way and could really raise the price of your crypto, and that's obviously good for those cryptos. So there's a lot of pressure for these cryptos to basically break through that magical top 100 list.
And now, just finally, Jason, so we have noted as well today in our broadcast that actually the amount of daily traded volume has increased year on year quite significantly, actually. How significant is it that they have steadily increased year on year, no matter what kind of market we are in?
Yeah, so I don't think the actual number of crypto is well, because you're going to see that number increase anyway. As you mentioned, there are already hundreds and hundreds of crypto coins being traded, and every time there's an ICO, there's then new crypto coins that are being traded. So that would be expected that you'd have more and more crypto coins trading. But I think one of the most important things to look at would be trading volume. And not even so much price, but basically trading volume, because the more interest that you see and the more activity you see of coins being traded back and forth, the more it means that market, that there is a bunch of funds being moved around in that market, and that essentially means that market is really active. So you wouldn't want the trading volume to drop down, even regardless of price. But the number of total coins would always go up steadily anyways, and that's something to be expected.
Fantastic. Well, Jason, thank you so much for joining us on the line for Art and You on the Block segment. It was an absolute pleasure to get your insights.
Sure. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you. That's all for myself and Jason for now. Jason will join us later on in today's show. Stay tuned for more from BloxLive TV. Back to you in the studio, Leah.
Thanks, Jessica. And that is all from us here at BloxLive TV today. I'm Leah Heilpern, and don't forget to tune in tomorrow for more of the latest cryptocurrency and blockchain updates. We'll see you then.